Hello there, and welcome back to Wonderland Asylum. Today we are back with issue 12 of the Hachette partworks release of Titanic, the ship, the legend. Okay, so as always, looking at the magazine, we have an article about what it was like being on one of the lifeboats, sailing away from the ship as she went down. Some of the artefacts, boots and hats that have been recovered. A picture of one of the launches there. Some information. That was lifeboat number 6. The photograph was taken from the deck of the Carpathia. Some information from the Carpathia, obviously the information that was sent to New York about the disaster. Some bits about the history of seasickness. Can be quite unpleasant, especially if it's one's first crossing. Again, another reference, if you get it, bravo. Some more information about the band. There's quite a lot about the band in the last few issues I've noticed. And bits of the Café Parisien. That was one of the big differences between Titanic and Olympic. The Titanic featured the Café Parisien, which the Olympic did not, I believe. Another film about the Titanic there, with several oldie-worldy actors. And then, of course, we're on to our instructions. So, without further ado, let's get our parts out and have a look at what we're doing today. So, a flatter, thinner box today. Again, brown cardboard, no display grade packaging. Again, as I say, a lot of people are getting through the subscription now. So today, again, just check to make sure there's nothing in the box. That's one of the drawbacks of it not being clear plastic. And there we go. One of the reasons I do that is so that I can go back and look at the video to make sure I've not lost anything. So, opening up. So as you can see today, what we're going to be doing is starting work on the next deck section, which is the forward well deck. And it sits immediately below the forecastle deck, or the forecastle deck, depending how you pronounce it. So again, we have another one of these self-adhesive deck sections. I will be using, again, my trick with the PVA glue to glue it down. It's not solely my trick, but yeah. We have our screws, which are on this occasion CP screws. We're given 5 of them. Again, we only need 4. And we have the forward hatches with some fantastic detailing on them. If you can see there. Excellent level of detail, especially when you look at the first forward hatch, which was completely blank on the top. Therein lies the problem, and we will discuss that in more detail just shortly. So, we've got our parts. Let's get going. Okie dokie, so I'm going to put the hatches and the screws to the side for the moment. The first thing it tells us to do is to peel off the self-adhesive backing and stick it down. Now, as we know, and as I showed you, it doesn't really stay down all that well if you use the self-adhesive, unless they've improved it for this piece. But I'm just not really wanting to take that chance. So what I'm going to do is, I have an old, pretty decrepit paintbrush here, and I'm just going to get the PVA glue, which has been sitting for a little while. Now this room is quite warm, you can see it's quite stringy. This room's quite warm because it's where I keep my reptiles. So don't worry about painting over the holes, because it's only PVA glue. It's not like it's a CA super glue or anything like that. So anything that goes over the holes you'll be able to get back out reasonably easily. Now what I did was I got this glue and I put it in, it's a Pringles lid, as I've mentioned before, that I use to keep my glue in. And what I basically did was let it sit for, it's been sitting for about 20 minutes to half an hour now. And what that does is it lets it start to go a bit tacky, so that you're not, in essence, dealing with very, very wet glue so it should stick down much more readily, and it shouldn't slide about as you're trying to do stuff. So let's some more of that on. Okay, as I say, I've always found painting to be particularly therapeutic. However, the caveat I'll add to that is only if you're not trying to paint something very, very detailed, because that's not just as relaxing, especially if you're not having a good day at it. There we go. There's no need to put any glue on this section here because the deck won't go anywhere near that piece at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish painting this on and I will come back to you. There's no sense in me making you watch me paint the other half. You can see what I'm doing and what my process is. It's a very thin layer. I'm not putting it on too thickly. There's no need because that will stick it down just fine. So I will be back in just a moment. Okay, so that's a fairly decent covering on the entire deck. You can see there. Not too much that it will squeeze everywhere when I push this down, but also enough that it'll actually cover it. So you can see there, peel it off and you can see it's got the self-adhesive backing that I have zero confidence in, put it that way. So what you do is you line it up with the edges, and as you put it down, just make sure that the holes all come through properly. And that's the other advantage to having this stuff on it, is that it will allow you to move the deck slightly after you've placed it, which you wouldn't normally be able to do with just the self-adhesive on its own. You can see there it's going down reasonably nicely. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a block over the top of it and peg it down just briefly so that we can kind of make sure the whole thing's going to stick down properly and we're not going to end up with any sort of bits where it's lifting off or where it's sort of bumpy, because we definitely don't want that. So I'll be back in just a sec. Okay, so now that that's glued and has stuck down reasonably nicely, it does look really good. I do like the wood effect. Now the deck on Titanic was slightly lighter than this, but again, I'll go with it. So the first thing we're doing is getting the big hatch here with all those nice locker pieces and grills and everything on the top of it. Now if you look, the pegs are slightly offset, so if you try and put it in the wrong way, like this, you'll end up with it hanging over the back there. Now that's not what you want. It needs to go on the other way like this, so there is a gap between the deck and the end of the deck and the hatch. So I will screw that in. It's screwed from the underside with two of the CP screws that we got with this issue. So I'll get the first one in and the second one goes just there. So that is one of the advantages of screwing it in from underneath, is it will help to pin that deck down. But what people were finding was that it was the edges that were starting to peel up, and then you were ending up with rolls in the middle and all sorts. It just wasn't sticking very well, particularly with the front pieces. And then this piece here, you can see there the grill ends just before that corner, and that corner has to point towards the front hatch, so it sits just like that. And again, it gets screwed down with the CP screws. Just like that, and then the final screw in here, like this. So yeah, it looks like that. And that's it for issue 12. So yeah, I'll have issue 13 just shortly, but obviously I'm going to do my little review as I do at the end, so stick around and we'll have a chat about these hatches. So that's us for issue 12. What are we getting with issue 13? We're getting the next section of the keel and some details for the forward well deck that we just started. Now, the forward hatch should have a detailing on it. It should have had 2 hatches and 4 portholes. It had absolutely nothing. It was completely plain. These 2 hatches, as you can see, have got lots of detail on them. They're very nicely detailed. On the original ship, they were made of canvas, stretched tightly across the two loading hatches. So they've gone to all that effort of putting all these wee details, all these wee vents, all these wee grills and everything. If I try and angle it so you can see it's a bit whitewashed, I do apologise. There you go, that's probably the best that you're going to see. So you can see all these wee vents, all these wee screws, all these wee details. Lovely! Completely and wildly inaccurate, but lovely. So I know there are a lot of people who have been sanding them or filling them with putty to make them look like canvas. I'm just going to leave them as they are. It's a nice bit of detail. Unless people happen to know a fair bit about the Titanic, then they're not really going to notice. And anyone who's likely to be visiting my home and seeing my model is unlikely to know very much about the Titanic, because I've probably bored them to death about it when I was younger. So, yeah, that's what we've done for now. As I say, for the next little while I will, because it is still starting, even after half an hour of being pegged down, it is starting to try and peel up again. So I will apply, I've just got normal clothes pegs, sadly I don't have proper clamps, but I will apply them to try and provide enough force to keep the deck down. Now, as I said, issue 13 will be coming very soon, I believe. And in that, we are continuing with some of the details for this well deck, and we're also attaching the next bit of the keel. So I know that over the next 4 issues that are coming in 13, 14, 15 and 16, we'll be expanding more on the size of the ship as well as adding some more details. So looking forward to that. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again for the next one. Thanks again. As always, any comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, find them down in the comments section. I'm quite good at replying. But again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you for issue 13.